For coming today. I talked to a few of you, and some of you said that this was your first time, so we feel honored that you came out today, and I know some of you are veterans every week that come, so thank you for being here. I'm Amy Morris. I'm the development director for RAMP. All of a sudden, it's been almost 12 years since I've been here, which time sure does fly. I've had the great honor to work with Justine, who is also in our development team, and we're going to start off today a little bit about what RAMP does. We won't talk a lot about that because that's not why we're here, but I think it's important to hear a little bit about what we do for you to understand why it is that we launched the Patio. So Justine's going to start with a little bit about our services.
Thank you all so much for having us today. So I'm very briefly, like Amy said, just going to give you a little idea of what RAMP does. Ironically, yes, we do not build ramps. That's kind of a misconception, and one of the first questions people ask when we're out is, do you build ramps? What we are is a center for independent living. We work with individuals of all ages who have mental or physical disabilities to live independently and reach their full potential. And a big key to independence is financial independence, and that's kind of where we're going to tie in today, where RAMP is working towards some financial independence as well. The way we do that, we're in curriculums in schools. We work with youth to kind of anti-bullying and kind of advocate for themselves if they have a disability. We also work with young adults in that transition phase from high school to adulthood to kind of build their plan as to what they'd like to do, again, with the goal being independence. So with that key and employment in the area, we work with adults through that. We work through accommodations in the home. So it's a really wide spectrum of services. And in order to fund those services, we rely on the state and federal government as well as grants and different fundraising activities to raise those funds. So a way that we thought we could kind of think out of the box is how can we raise some additional funds that are not restricted, which is kind of what a lot of the funds we get, they're designated to specific areas. And so that's kind of ties our hands a little bit, is that we are a nonprofit, but we do need to make a profit because we have bills to pay as everybody else does. So again, we do work with individuals of all ages, any mental or physical disability, and our services are provided for free to those individuals. And we have some brochures in the back that have some of the different programs if you're interested in learning more about the programs themselves and some of the events that we have coming up. But I'm going to hand it back over to Amy to kind of talk about the patio and what you guys came here to hear about.
Okay, so as Justine said, we have a wide variety of services that we provide. So how do we fund those services? Our budget, our revenue is about $2.2 million, and that is about 60% federal, state, and local grants. About 30% of that is fundraising, about 7.5% is social entrepreneurship or earned income. What, for a nonprofit? And about 3% is interest generated from our endowment, so funds that we generate back from our endowment fund each year. So we're going to focus a little bit today on that 7.5%, 8%, but first I want to talk a little bit about grants, because as Justine said, they really do fund the majority of what we do. 60% of our budget, or $1.3 million, comes from state, federal, or local grants. And that's an honor, really. Grants are tough to get. They're competitive. If you've ever written a grant, it's like writing your worst research paper ever times 15. And then when you get the grant, there's a lot of reporting. And so there's a lot of stipulations. But as I said, it is an honor because you're chosen. You're chosen to do a job. And you're chosen to do that job well because you're impacting people's lives. And so it is something that we take very seriously. But it also can be somewhat stressful to wonder when that check is going to come, if we're going to report correctly, if we're going to receive those funds again the next year. And so as Justine said, we work very hard to try to find ways to be more independent, to be more self-sustainable, to be able to generate our own revenue for some of those areas that aren't funded. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of those unrestricted funding sources, but first we have a very comical video that I think will show a little bit about how that grant process works. Just out of curiosity, are there any other nonprofits in the room? Okay. Well, then this might be new to most of you here.
Have a great day. Hi. What can I do for you today, sir?
Hi, my name is John. I appreciate what you do for this neighborhood. Your pizza is making a difference.
Well, thank you, John. You know, when we opened, we were just a small shop with a simple mission to...
Right. Listen, I represent a large institution, and we're interested in buying a significant number of your pizzas.
Oh, Oh, okay, great. Well, our cheese pizzas are $10.
Great.
And then
I've done some number crunching and determined that we're going to need 10 per month, and I can pay $8 per pie. Oh, and I'll need them to be Sicilian.
Oh, but the Sicilian pies are more expensive. That won't cover my costs.
Oh, I'm sure you can just find someone who will be willing to make up the difference.
Who?
Well, maybe do a couple black tie events, honor some people.
I'm concerned about the impact on quality at that price. And, my reputation is at stake.
Of course, but just imagine how much more efficient you would be with 20% less than what you should be given. But I'm sure there's plenty of other pizza places around here. If it's too much work.
It's okay. You know what? I've got an oven that's been on the fritz, and maybe the steady business will help pay for repairs.
Oh, I would love to help with that, but 100% of what we give to you must be spent on ingredients, okay? We do not pay for overhead, okay? See, none of this money can be used for utilities, rent, marketing, pizza boxes, or your salary. Especially not your salary. No.
No pizza boxes? And how am I supposed to deliver them?
Oh, well, there's a place in Bushwick that is completely sustainable. They deliver your pizza using solar-powered drones on recycle bins.
So I think you get the idea. I'm the grant writer for RAMP, so I find that extremely funny because I come across that all the time. It cannot be spent on salaries, it cannot be spent on, and where I really start to struggle with that is that, our staff are our biggest asset. When somebody comes to us, we spend a lot of time one-on-one mentoring them. In fact, RAMP as a Center for Independent Living, over half of our staff and board of directors are people with disabilities themselves. And so a lot of them, not that they've been in that person's shoes, but they can at least direct them in the right direction. For example, our Fast Track program, which is a transition program working with students with disabilities, high school age. There are services that we provide, and each service, our goal is to provide 3 training services per student. On average, we spent 22.5 hours per student on that program. Now, we get funding back from the state on a fee-for-service, and that covers a fraction of that cost. They really kind of pay you for the time that you spend directly one-on-one with a student, but it doesn't consider the time that you spend out in the community networking and helping find resources, or, for example, one student who was interested in looking to see what the broadcasting world had to offer. And so we set up an opportunity for him to go to WREX and learn all about putting on the news broadcast. From the weather to the back control rooms, I don't even know what they're all called, to being on air, he got to spend the entire day there. So did RAMP. So we were there right alongside him. So there's a lot of time that goes into it, and there's a lot of time that's not funded through those grants. There's a lot of time that we can't even put on those reports. So where do we get that money from? Where's that underfunded part or the unrestricted money come from? As Justine said earlier, we do some fundraising, and about 30% of our funding comes from fundraising. But we're also looking for a way to be more sustainable. Just like you as either business owners or employees of corporations or businesses in the community, how do you sustain your business? Well, how should RAMP sustain our business? How do we know if that grant's going to be here tomorrow? What can we do to be more self-sustainable on our own? Well, we didn't know that answer because we're not a nonprofit. So we got a grant, funny, to work with Thinker Ventures a couple of years ago and their creative team, and we sat down, we said, Jason, help. We need to find ways to be more self-sustainable. And after several meetings and going through kind of what our greatest assets are, what are our strengths, what do we do well, what can we sell, what can we offer as a nonprofit that would mingle with our mission, what can we do that would generate revenue. And so after several meetings, Jason and his gang came back with a book about this big with different ideas that we can do. Some of them were really just expanding on what we already do well. So for example, we have a curriculum program, actually 3 of them, called I Belong, Ignite, and TNT. And we teach those here in our communities that we serve. They're curriculums that are progressive on one another, starting with kindergarten going all the way through high school. And Jason said, well, duh, you're already doing this. You're doing it well. Why don't you sell it outside of this area? We said, oh, okay, that sounds like a good idea. So we did that. So we established a brand on RAMP curriculum. We developed a website. We hired a salesperson, something a nonprofit wouldn't think of, and nor did we really think of it or know how to do it. We hired a salesperson and we hit the road. And we started going to different conferences and communicating with school districts and other people around the country who might be interested in buying our curriculum. And so we're on the track to making some unrestricted revenue based off of a service that we provided and expanding that by selling that curriculum. By the way, that position is open, so if anybody knows any good salespeople out there, we could certainly use some help with that. Jason also said, hey, you've got this great building at 202 Market Street. That is your greatest asset. He said, well, it needs some work on the outside. You might want to fix up your landscaping. And we said, how? We don't have any volunteers to do that. We can't pay for that. And you might want to think about getting some signage and things like that to better brand yourself. But your building is beautiful. It's your greatest asset. And we said, wow, you're right. And we sit in the middle of City Market, Stroll on State, Screw City Beer Festival, every other thing that's happening in our cool downtown area. And this is something that we're proud of. We moved and bought that building in 1996, back when everybody downtown was fleeing east. You remember that? It was like, don't come down. And now that downtown is flourishing, we sit right in the middle of that. And it's something that we're really proud of and have this beautiful building that sits there. But how can we build revenue around that? We sell a few parking spots because we have a great parking lot. But that generates a couple $100 a year. We appreciate that, but sometimes we wish we had those parking spots back when we're all trying to find where to park, and we're parking down the road, but the business across the street has great parking lot space in our lot because we need that money. But then we also looked at our patio. We have this patio that sits outside, and we've never really done anything with it. It sits empty. If you've ever been to City Market, prior to the end of last year, it sat empty. Some people would mingle up there and maybe sit up on our windowsill or whatever, but so we started looking at that. Let's spruce up our building. Let's actually pay for some landscaping, which we did. Nothing special, but they cleaned it up a little bit. And we did some painting, and we bought some furniture. We hired our executive director's neighbor to build us some furniture, because that's what a nonprofit does. And now we have this beautiful furniture. It's very comfortable conversation pieces with patio, the fire pits that sit in front of you, a very entertaining area, if you will. And we're now selling the opportunity for people to rent our patio. So, wham, the patio at Ramp was born. And so now we are in the second phase of this, because we started last summer toward the end, and we had a couple people that rented the patio toward the end. And right now we're out talking to companies like yourself, or private parties such as a shower, or a birthday party, retirement party, a networking event, whatever it may be, who may be interested in being in the hottest place in Rockford right now, and that's downtown Rockford, in the middle of City Market, Stroll on State, Screw City Beer Festival, whatever it may be. So how do you do that? Well, the patio is available for our rental blocks. It's $300 an hour with a minimum of 3 hours. But when you rent the patio, you get 20% back to spend in food and drinks. So for $1,200, which is 3 hours, I'm not good at math, so if I can do this, you can follow. You get 20% back in food. So $240 back to spend either in market bucks or to spend in one of our preferred caterers. So market bucks, what is that? So the City Market obviously is known for their awesome vendors that they have and the opportunity to go out into the market. Has everybody been to City Market? Show of hands, who's been there? All right, pretty much everybody. And so the opportunity to really enjoy what the market has to offer. So with City Market bucks, you'll have the opportunity to give those to your guests who can go out and use those at the City Market preferred vendors that say market bucks accepted here. And then also, you have the opportunity, if you'd rather not do market bucks, because some people have said, we'd really like to try to keep people up on the patio. Then you can do a catering option, which again, you'll get some money back to spend with catering with our preferred vendors, which at this time is District and Woodfire Pizza. And then you can also have your own private bar up on the patio. So that's just one of the things that we're doing right now. We're also on Thursdays, mark your calendars for Food Truck Day at Ramp. We're in our parking lot, going to have Vibo's Pizza and Belchuro Churros and Coolie Coolers. They got some complicated names, but ice cream. So come on out for pizza and some dessert on Thursdays. We're working on trying to get some more food vendors, so if you know anybody else that wants to join us on Thursday or perhaps a different day, let us know, and kind of exploring different opportunities there right now. So 11:30 to 1, I believe is the time right now. Somebody asked what the time it was, 11:30 to 1. So that's kind of what we're doing. Kind of in wrap up here, I think the thing that we really want to emphasize is that, a nonprofit, why are we a nonprofit? Well, because at the end of the day, we really need to balance our budget, right? At the end of the day, we need to find a way to pay for the services. We don't want a major profit at the end of the day, because then we're not providing enough of what we're generating back into the services we provide, which never happens, by the way, so that's not usually an issue. But the thing is how do we get to that point? We have all these services that we want to provide, and let me tell you, when we start with our budget at the beginning of the year, it's very lopsided. It is very much, we want to do this, we want to do that, we think we can expand this, and we have a very large expense side of our budget, and we need to find a way to generate revenue for that, to fund that. And that's where really the grants come into play, but we know where we stand with grants. Typically when we do our budgeting, what we don't know is where we're going to get the majority of that, the gap to make the difference between what we have grants for and what we still need to fund. And so that's where some of this unrestricted funding comes from. And you can help us by coming out and renting the patio. All right, thank you.
There are some sheets in the back that talk about the rental opportunities at the patio, which I think is great. When does the Vibo's Pizza thing start?